This form filling is just like a laborious task that isn't maybe not even practical in the scenario. And maybe it's something you do at the end of the shift. Yeah. And at the end of the shift, you remember exactly what happened. Maybe you can talk to it in real time.
Hi everybody, welcome to the first in the series of a new podcast we've put together called Go HandsFree. I'm George Sims. I've spent 20 years in enterprise technology as a solutions architect and consultant, and I'm delighted to be here today to talk about wearables, smart glasses, extended reality and AI. I'm also very pleased to be joined by my co-host James Woodall. James, do you want to give us a quick intro?
So James Woodall, over 2 decades of software development experience working in assisted reality, now spending a lot of time in AI.
Fantastic. And we've also got a special guest today for the first podcast, Alex Karim from Microsoft. Alex, do you want to give us a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Alex. I'm an AI architect within Microsoft's London Innovation Hub. But my history with kind of AR, VR is quite long. So obviously used to work at McLaren, actually leading the kind of AR, VR kind of strategy there, all the way through to actually leading the kind of HoloLens or mixed reality business for Microsoft in the UK. So I have a lot of history in that kind of AR, VR kind of world. Obviously been working with you guys for a while as well through the Teams integration and various other things. But my focus now really is in the AI space. So working with customers to kind of understand how AI is going to transform their business and then working with them and hacking on, actually practically making that happen. So a lot of fun.
Awesome. And AI is going to be a particular focus for today. How's AI evolved, even in the last 2 years? How fast it moved and why are my children using ChatGPT?
Well, yeah, I was going to say that, ChatGPT is probably the reason for it. The acceleration has just been insane, the pace of change. As someone that works in the industry, I have to I have to listen to podcasts and read articles about every day to just make sure I'm up to speed with the latest and greatest. But the last 2 years have been a massive acceleration, mostly driven by these kind of large language models pioneered by the likes of OpenAI, who are the creators of ChatGPT. ChatGPT being an interface of, an application that is powered by underneath, which is the key, a large language model. AI as a term, however, is not a new thing, right? It's something that's been only in the last 2 years. It actually was a phrase coined in about the 50s. It was always about how do we use computers to predict an outcome. And that is something that we've been using every day. We just didn't know it. Every time we go on a streaming service and we get recommended a movie, that is an AI algorithm trained on your existing watch history to recommend a movie that you might like to watch tonight. When you go on a shopping website, on an e-commerce site, all the products that you're recommended are based on your previous buying history to predict what you may like to buy today. All of those systems have been around for a while. We just didn't recognize them as AI systems. And I think with ChatGPT, we're now recognizing that this is an AI. And why? Because we're talking to it, which is something that we simply just haven't been able to do until now. Of
course. And James, you're a developer. Without going too technical, you might confuse me. What's your perspective on that? Alex has given some summarization on, I guess, the business side and the higher level view, but is there any specific technology advancements that you've seen in your day-to-day development life that have become available?
Yeah, so I think the big difference with AI in the last couple of years than before is it's now accessible. So to a software developer, before, to embrace AI, you needed to really understand 2 concepts. Creating the AI model, the recommendation algorithms, those sorts of things. Creating the model is a skill set all unto itself, and then utilizing the model into your application. What's really happened in the last few years, especially with OpenAI, is they've taken away the training side. These LLMs, these pre-trained models, data scientists, computer scientists have created these massive large language models that are so powerful that they don't need to be retrained for different use cases. They're powerful enough by themselves to do what they need to do across a wide array of industries. But what does that mean for people like myself? It means that if I want to utilize AI in my application, I don't need to know the training side. I can literally just bring in or call out to the model and then add that capability into my application without really needing to understand how it works, and also providing the compute infrastructure to run the models themselves.
So it's these foundational services that have become available that make it more accessible and easy for people to build solutions.
And it's that pre-training. I think that's the key, right? With a traditional, for example, let's say a recommendation engine for movies, right? That is great at that, and pretty much nothing else. And that's fantastic for that use case. But then the amazing thing about these large language models, they're trained on a massive data set, like almost like a trawl of the entire internet condensed into this model. And that makes them extremely flexible and knowledgeable on lots of different tasks and items, and super flexible. And then they have key skills, right? So the ChatGPT is really great in that, it's democratized the access, people are now aware of it, and people are excited about it and looking at how they can leverage it. But ChatGPT is an application, as I kind of alluded to. It's not the LLM, it's not the technology, it's a wrapper around it. And so the idea to say that a large language model is just chat is really kind of underselling the capability that we're talking about here. Yes, they are great at natural language processing, talking to it. Translation is another key skill, talking to it in French and getting a response in Spanish. If you wanted that, really, really powerful. But it's also very good at summarizing content, right? So you could send a ton of data and it can give you insights, actions. For example, the Copilot in Teams I use every day, you turn on the transcription and I can see who's got the actions, what are the key kind of outcomes of the meeting, and it really kind of focuses the mind. So that summarization as a key skill is really good. And it's also good at searching for information, finding bits of information. I think that's a really key skill. So when you start thinking about all these skills, you then start to understand the real value of the technology.
Yeah, got it. I mean, in the past, you would have needed to have trained an LLM on your company data. So again, the democratization is now available because you don't need to do that, but you get the power of that. And that's a huge change.
And I mean, obviously you've got a lot of background with wearable computing, HoloLens program. James, similar background, right? How do you think AI is going to impact wearable computing, extended reality, smart glasses? Alex, what's your view on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's just going to make things easier. I think that's the reality of it. When we think about why do we have head-mounted devices? Well, it's to free up people's hands, and so they can actually do their tasks and make their jobs easier. They don't have to hold a tablet or a phone, and we've talked about this, that's just not practical in certain scenarios for these field engineers. And so that's that part of it. But even then, they're still having to learn how to talk to a computer, and I think that's the key difference. We've had to learn how to talk to computers over the last kind of few decades. Whether that's a developer learning how to code, whether that's a user on a computer learning how to use a keyboard and a mouse. These are all skills that we've had to learn how to input and interact with a computer. With a large language model, it's really interesting that the skill is it's learned how we communicate to a certain degree, and so we're able to talk to it in the way that we like to talk, and it's learning. So it's a completely different shift. Instead of us learning how to talk to a computer, the computer has now learned how to talk to us, which just frees things up. And from a use case perspective, being able to just talk in natural language to your head-mounted device or to your phone or anything like that is a completely different input, and that makes it a lot easier, a lower barrier of entry for kind of these users.
So we're really talking about an evolution of the interface.
Yeah. Yes.
We've almost turned the interface on its head. That's super interesting. And I guess if we look at the Frontline, James, people, we see regularly lots of form filling, right? There's a lot of form filling that happens in Frontline work for a number of different reasons. But I mean, is AI going to make that easier? LLMs and natural language? Am I really going to be able to fill out a form using AI, natural language?
So the person who created that form, let's say you're a building inspector, you've just finished a project, your job is to walk around and make sure everything was done to code. The person who created that form was sitting in an office behind Microsoft Word, laying out a form. They're not on the site, they're not getting their hands dirty. And so there's a bit of a disconnect between the intention of the form and the actual execution and filling out the form. And I think where LLMs can really come into play is you want the expert who's doing the inspection to just be doing the inspection. They know what they're looking for, that they know what's good and what's bad. To be able to just talk to the computer, the hands-free computer, and have it interpret the form is going to be a huge game changer, because you're not then losing the context. Because today you might find that the form doesn't quite fit with what you're doing, or the order in which the form is laid out is not necessarily the order in which the inspection was done. And what you're doing is removing the barrier of the actual sitting down and filling in the form. You're just doing your job, you're describing it, you're talking to it. And it's the job of the LLM to do the interpretation, the summarization, to actually put that data back into the form.
And this is all in the context of these are people not working in an office. These are people up a pylon or in a mine or out in the rain. And so like this form filling is just like a laborious task that isn't maybe not even practical in the scenario. And maybe it's something you do at the end of the shift. Yeah. And at the end of the shift, you remember exactly what happened. Maybe you can talk to it in real time and actually get that information as you're going. So it's a completely different kind of shift in terms of the way that you're interacting.
So if I'm interpreting this correctly, I'm not an LLM myself, but from what I'm hearing, you're saying the structuring of data back into the computer, the server, is going to be vastly improved using LLMs, and we can actually get real-time data. So I guess having data as it's happening, and also having an improved accuracy.
But taking
on that
unstructured data and turning that into useful insights. I think James, you've talked about this as well in terms of like the power of it over unstructured data is kind of powerful, right?
Well, there still needs to be a database of all of those inspections.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a spreadsheet, maybe it's a SQL database. There still needs to be that database. But you've got that gap of how do you get from the frontline worker to the back-end systems. But also going the other way, if you want to feed in documents into the LLM, in the past, those documents would all have needed to be structured, whereas the LLMs now themselves can understand the structure and infer the structure without it being structured in the first place. So I think there's huge advantages, both actually completing the data and getting the data, where it's still in a format that everybody can access in simple tabular format and those types of things.
Okay.
And this is, you know, again, we're talking about the natural language capability, which is key, but, you know, think about the back-end process as well. Some of these large language models can be supported in that back-end process. Say you have this natural language interface and it populates a form, but then you can throw that large language model over your data to populate new fields or provide insights. And stuff that nobody would see and recognize as AI, but would just see as data transformation. So there's a load of things that you can do in the back end as well as the front end in terms of the chat.
Okay, that makes sense. And James, I know you've spent a couple of days using some Azure services, chucking a few things together on one of our devices. Can you show us some of this in action? Because, you know, I think actions always speak louder than words, so I'd love to see this in action if that's possible.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so I've got my RealWear Navigator 520 on, and I'm streaming at the moment to the laptop so you can see what I'm doing. Sure. And what we're going to do is go through an incident report. So we've got this light here, and we're going to use it later on for our industrial purposes. But I've got a problem with the battery. So totally hands-free, I'm going to describe my incident. Incident report. So the light that we need later on, it's powered by battery and by mains power, but the battery doesn't seem to be working. We need to probably fix this before we go on site. So the dictation has listened to what I said. Obviously, you saw literally the transcription as I was doing that. But what we've done immediately is summarize that into a report that makes a bit more sense. So we've taken out the ers and the ums and the slightly unstructured way of speaking, and it's just summarized it. But it's missing a bit of information here. So if you think about the form, I might be filling out a form, but in this case, we're going to get the device to actually prompt us to add a bit more information. Refine. So it's now asking me, have you checked if the battery is fully charged? Answer question. Yes, so we're pretty sure that the battery is fully charged. We made sure they were charging before we left this morning. So what we can see now is the summary has then been regenerated. It's taken the initial report and now the follow-on report. And you can see halfway through now, it's actually saying it was checked and fully charged. So it's now injected that into the right place in the report. To add a bit more color to this, I'm going to take a photo. Take photo. Just going to ask Tom, break the fourth wall in a way for us. There we go. So I'm going to take a picture of this now. Take photo. Perfect, there we go. So we've now taken the photo, we're going to attach it to the report, and I'm going to send this off. Send report. Okay, and now this has gone to Microsoft Teams. So we can see here that in Teams, we've got the report sent.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, James. Super interesting to see, and hopefully it's sparked some creative juices for developers around the world to build experiences. I think without being, bringing a downer to this conversation, I think there are some realities, some ethical, practical considerations. We all know AI consumes an awful lot of compute power. There's an environmental impact there. There's also some ethical considerations. Alex, you must talk about this a lot. I mean, can you just give us a quick couple of minutes on some of the key challenges you see and maybe how we can address them?
I think it's interesting. Customers are coming to us really excited about doing it, but so there's no selling needed to be done on AI. The reality is, how do we do this responsibly and how do we do this ethically? So there's two elements. There's obviously the sustainability angle. I think there's no getting away that these AI systems, whether it's in the training of them or in the inferencing, which is the using of it, that they consume energy. How do we mitigate that? Because there's an energy, there's a cost to an email, there's a cost to a Teams message. The cost to AI interactions is considered, an uplift. Why? Because it's using some of these more advanced kind of power-hungry chips. So from a Microsoft perspective, we have to look at it from two senses. What are we doing with the AI that benefits the world? And then also, what are we doing with our own data centers to make them more green and eco-friendly? So from that perspective, we're buying energy at massive scale across the world, more renewable sources. We're looking at our own on-premises infrastructure. How can we make them more efficient? The actual physical chips. We also have these things called circular centers, which are taking chips out, refurbishing them, and putting them back in. So we're just trying to be as circular, in that sense, and also as green as we can. But there is no getting away from the increased uplift in terms of green credentials. From a technology perspective, we need to be responsible. So from a Microsoft perspective, we have responsible kind of framework that we use in everything that we do, but we also offer to our customers to help them in their kind of design. And one of the things that we look at is this framework across fairness, transparency, all of these kind of key things. And if I touch on transparency for one, one of the key things that people had when the AI came to the fore a few years ago was, do I trust the answer? Is it getting this question wrong? And so what we've been able to do is add this grounding into these kind of responses. So if you talk to Copilot today, it will give you a response, but it will give citations of where that data came from, which is a key in terms of the trustability of some of these systems. So from our perspective, from a sustainability perspective, we're looking at everything that we can do to mitigate some of these uplifts. And then from a technology perspective, we have our own frameworks we use for responsibility. But we also offer them to our customers to kind of get hands-on.
Fantastic. My mother was a librarian, and she always used to tell me, make sure you know where your source of data is. If you're writing a dissertation or a paper, you've got a reference. So it's interesting that's been carried across. And I guess just to wrap things up, right, some closing thoughts and final comments. Imagine I'm a CEO of a major enterprise, which would be wonderful. I know I need to do AI. Where do I start? What are the first steps I should take? Who should I employ? What's your advice to companies that know they need to, but maybe don't understand where to start and how to implement?
Well, yeah, I mean, from our perspective, like I said, companies are coming to us and asking, we need AI and we need it now. And, I usually say, let's take a step back. That's great. And I appreciate your enthusiasm, but what business problem are we actually trying to solve here? And I think that's the reality of any technology. There's a lot of hype around AI right now, but we need to make sure that we're not just hyping something up, we're actually driving value. So how do we do that? We need to uncover the business problems that we're trying to solve. Now, that could be process automation. That could be in the way that we're accelerating the way our frontline workers are able to communicate communicate and form fill and all these other use cases. But that's the key. And if I was a CEO, I'd be looking at my organization and my problems, the makeup of my organization. Do we have lots of frontline workers? Well, maybe we need to have a look at how we can automate and accelerate some of those processes that they're having to do. Do I have loads of desk-based workers? Well, maybe I need to be looking at giving them co-pilots to make them more productive. So, it's a really interesting thing, and the profile or the persona of the user is kind of key in everything here. But again, there has to be a business problem we're trying to solve for, because we don't want AI to just be a cost. It needs to provide a benefit, and that's the key.
I don't disagree with any of that, but I would certainly add, just ask ChatGPT. I mean, if you're a CEO of a big enterprise and you're not too sure how to apply AI, just describe your business to ChatGPT and see what it comes out with. It might give you 10 answers to the point that you were saying some of them might be wrong, but of the 10, if you've got 3 winners, then that's where you're going to start. Maybe you don't even need your consultants today to help advise. Just do a little bit of research, ask ChatGPT, and that I think goes back to the democratization of AI now. You've got this co-pilot, this ChatGPT that you can just ask and get some answers from, and I would say that's probably a really great starting point.
That's really interesting comments and thoughts, and I think we've pretty much run out of time for today, but thank you so much, Alex, for coming to join us here today at Keele University Science Park. And James, thanks for turning up as well and offering your valuable insights.
Sounded like he wasn't going to do it.
I know, almost. Yeah. But yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in and watching. Join us next time on Go HandsFree, the podcast for wearable and AI computing.